All right. Good morning, everybody. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar. The topic for today's webinar is hybrid cloud security with Microsoft. I would like to start with a little introduction about myself. My name is Savio Fernandes, and I'm going to be the presenter for today's session. I work as a pre-sales solution architect at 7Cs Technology and handle the overall Microsoft Cloud as well as the Citrix portfolio based out of Abu Dhabi. I come with about 18 plus years of overall experience and would be more than happy to engage with you on any of your requirements pertaining to this specific session, or it could be any other initiatives that you would have or on any other requirements catering towards the cloud. We will try to accommodate at least 5 minutes for Q&A towards the end of the session. So I would request you to keep your questions for the end so that we can address all these questions once and for all. A little about 7Cs Technology. 7Cs Technology is a 38-year-old company in the region with our offices spanning across Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Sharjah. We have various business units that we operate as a business unit model, out of which cloud is one specific BU which I represent and where I drive pre-sales around any cloud opportunities. We are a services focused and a solution oriented organization, which means that we are more driven into implementations and services on cloud adoption and implementations with a presence of being a LAR and an LSP as well as a CSP partner for Microsoft. With that being said, today's session, to give you a brief overview, is going to be on hybrid cloud security, which is specifically going to be talking about two key pillars of the security suite on Azure, and how that can give you a good understanding of the security landscape across a hybrid multi-cloud model. So we have decided to pick these two topics out of the whole gamut of the native cloud security solutions that we have on Azure and M365. And I'm sure this will be of good value and help you have a good understanding of the overall solution. Cloud security addresses three most urgent security challenges today. As you see on the screen, one being rapid changing workloads and insecure configurations. By saying this, rapidly changing workloads is both a strength and also a challenge of the cloud today. On one hand, end users are empowered to do more. On the other hand, how do you make sure that the ever-changing services that people are using and creating are up to your security standards, right? In terms of the security benchmarks, and how are you ensuring that they are also following security baselines and best practices? That's one side of it. The other aspect is the increasingly sophisticated attacks. Wherever you run your workloads today, the attacks keep happening and getting more sophisticated. You have to secure not just public cloud workloads, but also other hybrid workloads, which are in effect, whether it be internet-facing workloads or any other workloads, which makes it more vulnerable if you don't follow the most important security baselines and best practices. The third aspect of the challenges that we see with most of the organizations is also visibility into the security and compliance area. The number of security alerts and alerting systems have far outnumbered the number of administrators with the necessary backgrounds required and also the experience to make sure your environments are protected. Having end-to-end visibility into your security and compliance estate and also staying up to date with the latest attacks is a constant challenge, making it impossible to stay in place while the world of security is ever-changing fast. So based on a recent research that you see on the screen in terms of a breach report, you would see that there are almost 68% of breaches happening. And there is a CIO ecosystem of almost 52% of organizations looking at security and how that can be built on the cloud in terms of protecting your cloud resources. And also, if you look at the 2021 breach attacks was almost estimated at a cost of $4 million. Coming to Azure and how it is a cloud platform built also as a security vendor. For building new feature sets for various security services in Azure, Microsoft has engineered and has an engineer base of almost 3,700 plus security field experts, and have also made huge investments of almost $1 billion spent annually on security and increasing and enhancing security on the security ecosystem. Microsoft also collects a huge number of signals generated every 24 hours and is using that to enhance security for various security services. If you see in the year 2020, 6 billion malware threats were identified and blocked by Defender. This shows the economies of scale and also the expertise and the investments put to build an enterprise-grade cloud security solution. When attacking cloud infrastructure today, adversaries often attack multiple resources, as you would be aware of, and try to obtain access to customers' data or company secrets. The cloud kill chain model explains how attackers attempt to gain access to any of your resources running in the public cloud through a process which is called as a kill chain process or a 4-step process, which is embarked upon 4 key pillars. The first pillar is exposure, then comes access, lateral movements, and actions. So what do we mean by these key pillars, and how are they going to affect the cloud kill chain model? Exposure is when attackers are looking for opportunities to gain access to your infrastructure. For example, an attacker knows the customer-facing application must be open for certain legitimate users to access them. Those applications are today exposed to the internet and therefore susceptible to attacks. Attackers will also attempt to attack vulnerabilities or exploit weak credentials in the exposed applications. Exposures can also be found in vulnerabilities or malware-based attacks to do with compromising user credentials. Now, the attackers will also try to exploit an exposure to gain access to your public cloud infrastructure, should you be already onboarded on the public cloud ecosystem. This can be done through compromised credentials. That's one way of doing it. The second way is to use compromised instances or misconfigured resources which are not configured as per the best practices. With compromised instances, attackers can gain access to instances by exploiting a vulnerability such as a publicly faced non-protected web app, or an exploiting a weak credential which has not been configured with security principles like multi-factor authentication, such as brute forcing a publicly facing server, for example. Without security controls in place, there's almost a huge amount of breaches that are taking place month on month, and it also increases the length to discover such kind of attacks. Now, that is one way of also the exploiter getting an exposure and then having an access to any of the services on the public cloud. Now, once that is reached to this particular stage, it is also going to go into a lateral movement stage from there on, wherein during the lateral movement stage, the attacker discovers what resources they have access to now and what is the scope of the access. So successful attacks on instances gives attackers, for example, access to database instances or any other sensitive data or sensitive information lying inside the data services. The attacker can then search for additional crawl credentials and without any security tool can quickly notify you of the attack. So it takes an organization on an average of about 100 odd days to discover a breach. Meanwhile, in just 24 to 48 hours of a breach, you would see that an attacker has already gained access or complete control of your network. So you will see a lot of attacks happening today in the market in terms of ransomware, public attacks, brute force attacks, penetration attacks, and things like that. So the attacker has as an attacker takes lateral movements which are largely dependent on the resources they have access to, and they were able to then gain an access during the lateral movement phase. Attackers then can take actions that cause data exfiltration, data loss, business loss, and a launch of multifold other attacks. So for an enterprise, the average financial impact of data loss is, for example, almost reaching almost $1 million as per the statistics that we have. So that's what the cloud kill chain model was. Now we slowly enter into the space of the cloud security, where we're talking about how it is very important to not just look at what Microsoft security is bringing onto the table, but also look at a security that also has to be catered to from a customer perspective. So this is majorly a very important joint responsibility that has to be taken care of, both from a Microsoft and from a customer side. Now, securing and managing your Azure resources is definitely a joint responsibility. It is shared between you and Microsoft. So the physical aspects of security from a data center standpoint, in terms of multiple layers of physical protection at the data center, at the perimeter, the state-of-the-art security controls in terms of video coverage, biometric authentication, so on and so forth, is all something that Microsoft commits in terms of its security standards for managing the cloud foundation. From a customer perspective, also, it is very important for you to make sure that all the resources, all the services that you onboard on the cloud is also secure and managed as per the operating system model in terms of governance and the security benchmarks. So customers have the responsibility to keep their virtual machines, applications, and workloads and data secure well as per the best practices and recommendations. Now, cyberspace is definitely the new battlefield today. We are seeing attacks on civilians, and not just civilians, but also organizations across nations. Attacks are no longer just against governments or enterprises today. We are seeing attacks against private properties, the mobile devices we carry around every day, the laptops on our desk, and public infrastructure, for an example. What started a decade or a decade and a half ago as a sense that there was some teenagers in the basement hacking their way has moved far beyond that. It has morphed into sophisticated international organized crime and, worst case, sophisticated nation-side attacks. So in terms of the hybrid cloud, what is the approach that we're talking today is, number one, increasing how do we take care of the increasingly sophisticated attacks. So cloud adoption today is transforming businesses, but also presenting major challenges to IT security and management, as we all know. Azure has the tools that enables customers to effectively address these challenges, and we'll see these how these challenges are being addressed in the subsequent slides. Within companies, business units and developers are leveraging cloud today to drive business innovation and agility, as we all know, and they are seeing amazing results. However, cloud security and management is not always top of the mind for them, and often it is an afterthought, correct? Which increases the company's exposure to unnecessary cloud risk. Azure enables customers to gain better visibility and control over the cloud environment to minimize risk while continuing to enable business innovation. All businesses face security threats today on premises and as well as on the cloud. Really, the only way to keep up with the threats and to stay competitive today is by coming to the cloud, where Azure can help you. So Microsoft has almost 3,005 plus security professionals that work tirelessly day in and day out to make sure that we provide customers a secure cloud infrastructure, and Azure provides additional tools for you to then leverage to protect your resources and your platform on the overall. So cloud environments today, as they are enormously dynamic, cloud resources are quickly spun up and down to enable faster time to market, meet seasonal customer requirements and demand, or maximize resources utilization and stay cost effective. So this is where we want to leverage cloud security to enable development throughout the entire life cycle, and approach how do we monitor, manage cloud environments and resources to ensure cloud health, performance, minimize resource utilization, and eliminate any such attacks. Secondly, personnel and resources are also limited. According to a youth survey that was run quite some time back, we've seen 51% respondents claim that organizations had a problem of shortage of cybersecurity skills. So this security challenge is getting more complicated, and the stakes are also rising. But many enterprises don't have even the resources they need to meet these security challenges. So that makes say that security is also expensive, and how Azure can help you seamlessly integrate not just with cloud resources to build in security there, but also with the on-premise resources that you may have today. Another important aspect is virtually anything can be corrupted, which is the last and the most important approach that we would like to address. So the number of connected devices that we've seen is almost predicted to top in billions. not including computers and phones, but also a lot of other aspects. So as we connect virtually, everything, anywhere, anytime, anything can be also disrupted, right? Everything from the cloud to the edge needs to be considered and protected. So that's what we're going to see. How do we approach these cloud native security areas? So what we're bringing today in this webinar is called Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Now, Microsoft Defender for Cloud is a solution that we would like to help you understand how this as an Azure native service can help strengthen your cloud security portfolio and posture and provide threat protection for workloads running in Azure on-premises and in other clouds. It enables continuous assessment of security posture, protects against cyber attacks using Microsoft's vast threat intelligence, and also helps implement security faster with integrated controls. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud addresses three major needs, which is continuously accessing your multi-cloud environment and hybrid requirement, providing you recommendations on hardening and securing the resources, and also helping detect malicious activities. Now we'll go into the little depth of the Microsoft Defender for Cloud on an overview. So what you see on the screen are the two pillars of Microsoft Defender for Cloud. One of the pillar is called the Cloud Security Posture Management, which you see on the left, and the other is the Cloud Workload Protection, which is on the right. So what does Cloud Security Posture Management basically take care of? So one is the secure score that you see there. Secondly are the policies and compliances that can be configured, and then the automation piece. On the cloud workload protection, we are talking about another product which tightly integrates with Defender for Cloud, which is called Azure Arc. And Azure Arc is available not just for the infrastructure piece, but also for data services. So we're going to cover a little bit on the Azure Arc and primarily on the Microsoft Defender for Cloud in the slides to come. Defender for Cloud protects multi-cloud and hybrid environments and ensures your cloud infrastructure resources are protected from common threats, such as brute forcing of virtual machines, attacking storage services, or any of your SQL injections, or even mitigating threats against containers, the key management services like the Azure Key Vaults and the IoT devices. So Defender for Clouds, if you see here, is delivering a protection for all these resources today directly within the Azure experience and extending protection not only to the cloud resources, which is very important for you to know, but also to the on-premises and multi-cloud virtual machines and SQL databases using Azure Arc services. So what we see today is Defender in terms of the new announcements made from Microsoft is also helping you have a multi-cloud spanning of your security estate for different cloud providers. So it's today helping you also onboard and secure AWS resources, GCP accounts, as you see here. It gives you a bird-eye view of your entire security posture and also helps you look at those recommendations on how do you improve on the overall security posture of your environment. All right. In terms of the overall solution architecture, so this will give you an overall holistic understanding of how Defender fits into the Azure solution. So if you see here on the screen, you will see that we have the Defender for Cloud sitting on the extreme right, and we are able to look at various Azure resources from where we can collect the logs, whether it's Windows, Linux logs, on-premises instances of servers, and how do we bring that all into a security or a log analytics workspace from where we can always pull out various security dashboards, deliver insights, and how do we also have actionable actions that we can take in terms of automation and curation of those reports and the logs that we're generating from here. So this gives you a complete end-to-end visibility of your security landscape proactively, which can also be taken into an actionable insight. Coming to the first pillar that we just talked about, which is the cloud security posture management. So here we are going to be speaking about how it can be helping you strengthen your security posture, mainly from the resources that you're onboarding on the cloud. So here we speak about the secure scope, policies, compliance, and automation. So these features are something that we are going to be bringing out in this particular pillar of the Defender for the cloud. So the first part of the feature that we would like to highlight is, as you see on the screen, is a snapshot of the Defender for Cloud on screen, which is the security dashboard wizard. So here we can see that we have a unified resource view of all your cloud resources. So under a single pane of glass, what you can see is a unified view of all the resources, whether it's the resources hosted on Azure, AWS, Google, for that matter, or also the resources that you're also managing on the on-premise environment. So you have focused views for various resources along with the security posture for those resources. So what we're saying is we have a clear and a simple view identifying all the security related statistics all at a single pane of glass and at a single glance. All right. Security posture management with Secure Score. So what is Secure Score? Secure Score is a tool that helps you assess your workload security posture. So let's say today you have onboarded virtual machines on Azure and you would want to understand how secure those virtual machines are. So based on the configuration of the virtual machine and the recommendations of the best practices of security, if you have configured certain security configurations for those virtual machines, you would be given a specific Secure Score value. Now that Secure Score value is going to help you identify how strong those virtual machines are protected, and it will also give you recommendations as to how you can improve on that score to give you the to make it as secure as possible. So Defender for Cloud, what it is doing is enabling you to strengthen your security posture. It means it's helping you identify and perform the hardening task recommended as per the security best practices, and also implement them across your machines, data services, and apps. So this includes managing, enforcing your security policies, and making sure your Azure virtual machines, your non-Azure servers, as well as PaaS services are all compliant. Secure Center provides you with the tools you need to also have a bird's eye view of your workloads with focused visibility on your network security estate. With so many services offerings and the security benefits, it's often hard to know what steps you need to take first, right, to secure and harden your workloads. So that's where the Secure Score comes into picture, and how that Secure Score reviews your security recommendations as per the best practice regulatory compliances and prioritizes them for you. So you know now which recommendations are the right ones to prioritize first and to roll out first. So this helps you find the most serious security vulnerabilities for any of those resources, so that you can prioritize proactively the investigation and also implement those best practices. Compliance assessment and management. So how do we basically help you in terms of monitoring compliance? So security assessments are mapped today with the Defender for Cloud to help you map to a compliance control and requirement, enabling aggregated views of compliance status. So there is something called as Azure Security Benchmark. So this was recently announced with the Azure Defender for Cloud, with the recently globally announced announcements for the new features available with the Defender for Cloud, which is always monitored in the dashboard by default. Okay, and is fully aligned with the Secure Score, which means it contains the same set of recommendations that you would see in the Secure Score, also in the Azure Security Benchmark monitoring. Therefore, this is helping you now resolve those recommendations, helping to meet the control requirements and helping you raise your Secure Score at the same time. So the dashboard is dynamic, monitoring, also helping you monitor exactly the set of standards that are important to your organization. You also onboard custom standards to the dashboard and define your own custom controls if the need be. Reports can be also downloaded from each standard if the requirement requires you to do that, and you can choose from a large range of executive level PDF reports and a detailed CSV report also for that matter. If you see, there's also something called as a MITRE attack framework. So now this is also a new announcement which is making Defender for Cloud to be also built on the on the MITRE framework, which is a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques taken based on real-world observations. So this basically is a framework used for security benchmarking, and it's also used to access security products by running various simulations techniques to check the security standards and compliance ecosystem. Coming to the inventory view, so this gives you also an inventory view. When we say inventory view, it is basically a single view of all the monitored resources. So the resources are centrally viewable. There is easy filtering available. You can also do a sorting and cross-referencing of various resources. You can filter resources by properties, maybe policies, tags, or resource groups. You can also filter the resources, as you see here, by security posture, recommendations, specific vulnerabilities on different filtering mechanisms. So filtering can be also done by statuses, by pricing tags or agents or whatsoever. Now, the same reports that you see here on the screen are also allowed to be exported into a CSV, and they can be explored and extrapolated and also be looked at from an Azure resource graph perspective. Coming to identifying sensitive data. So now data resources remains a popular target for malicious actors, right? Making it crucial for security teams to identify, prioritize, and also secure sensitive data resources across their cloud environments. To address this challenge, there is something we have that Microsoft has announced, which is also, again, as we saw on the previous slide, is getting tightly integrated between Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which we called as Azure Purview. Now, Azure Purview is a unified data governance service that provides rich insights into your sensitivity of your data within Azure Cloud or multi-cloud, and as well on-premise workloads. So the integration with Azure Purview extends your security visibility in Defender for Cloud from an infrastructure resources, drilling down into your data, enabling an entirely new way to prioritize resources for security teams. So for an enriched cloud security posture management experience, we include an information protection tile, which you can see here in the Defender for Cloud, that shows you the current scan coverage and a graph with a number of recommendations and alerts by classified resource types. So in addition, we can also create new filters in the Defender for Cloud inventory experience, for example, and also security alerts called data sensitivity classification and data sensitivity labels. So these new options now, what are they helping you? They're helping you allow security teams to filter specifically for sensitive data and also more effectively prioritize these enforcements of security policies and investigations of alerts across the most sensitive resources in your Azure cloud ecosystem. So that's what you're able to get in terms of integration with Azure Purview along with Defender for Cloud. Automation is something that also comes built in with the cloud posture management. So today we can integrate and automate, as you see, with various tools and third-party solutions. So that's natively integrable with Microsoft Teams, Outlook. You can automate responses also with Logic apps. You can you can have exporting into an event hub or a log analytics workspace, and then import that into your Azure, into your SIEM solutions and things like that. So multi-cloud support is what we are saying is bringing you with Microsoft Defender for Clouds. We are not just looking at just Azure workload protection, but also multi-cloud providers like AWS and Google. We now move into cloud workload protection. So this is where we'll be talking about how Azure Arc is going to bring in an importance into the cloud as well as the hybrid resources and workloads. So here we're going to talk about Azure Arc for servers. We're going to talk about Azure Arc for cloud native workloads and how that can also be extended to other services like data services, storages, resources, and other aspects of the solution. So with multi-cloud and hybrid protection, all that we were looking at from this first slide till now was how we can have Azure Defender for Cloud look at protecting workloads on Azure, AWS, and Google. We are now trying to look at how Azure Arc is going to be tightly integrated with the Defender for Cloud to give you a visibility of protection onto your on-premise workloads as well. So Azure Arc is a service which is available today, globally announced, and can be helping you expand into a hybrid model where you can not just protect workloads on the cloud, but also organize and govern workloads on the on-premise environment. Azure Arc extends this Azure management plane to your physical and virtual servers running anywhere on your on-premise, whether it be on a VMware or a Hyper-V or a physical environment, where you can govern, manage these servers from a single scalable management plane of glass. The same Azure Arc is available in the various flavors. Like you see, Azure Arc is available for servers, for your servers on the on-premise. It is also available for Kubernetes as well as data services on Azure. So if you have an Azure Stack HCI system sitting on premises, it can also have a protection for the containers running on Kubernetes and so on and so forth. So this is what Azure Arc at a very high level architecture is. So basically it is divided into two parts. You have the Azure Arc enabled infrastructure that you can protect, and then you have the Azure Arc enabled services. So what it is doing basically, it is basically helping you connect not just Azure resources, but also on-premises resources and operate those hybrid resources from the same Azure console. So we can now deploy the Defender for Cloud anywhere within Azure Arc. So now the Defender for Cloud seamlessly integrates, as you see on the screen, with your data center on premises. And the same Azure Resource Manager model is something that sits between the Azure platform on the cloud as well as the Azure Arc sitting on the on premises to helping you protect all these resources. So now you can actually basically push the agents for the Azure Arc into your cloud on-premise workloads. You can have the extensions installed, and it is basically a log analytics agent that is going to be sitting on the on-premise environment. Now, with this, you can then push policies, you can enforce compliances, and you can also simplify the reporting, all coming into the Azure portal itself and giving you a single unified experience. So what we're talking about here is the threat landscape, which is becoming more complex with increasing sophistication of attacks and the wider attack surfaces. Security teams today are struggling to manage this environment with multiple solutions that are often not integrated. This results in serious threats, avoiding detection due to data being collected and analyzed in silos, right? As well as security teams suffering from alert fatigue. Further pressure on resources is felt from worldwide shortage of skilled security practitioners, as we are seeing today. We need intelligent, automated, integrated security to close these gaps, providing visibility and proactive responses across the organization. So what Microsoft is offering here, as you see on the screen, is a unique approach that empowers professionals with both an SIEM and an extended detection as well as response system, which is an XDR tool from a single vendor perspective, with an emphasis on integration so that the defenders get the best of the both worlds. When we say that, it is basically end-to-end visibility across all your resources, intelligent alerts built with a deep understanding of individual resources and filtered with artificial intelligence. With this combination that you see here with the SIEM and XDR capabilities from within the Microsoft Cloud, Defender can now focus on what's important, right? Namely, mitigating those threats, more context more than ever, and spending less time on infrastructure or large volume of signals coming in. So Azure Sentinel is one such cloud native SIEM delivering intelligent security analytics for your enterprise. Now, this connects to any of your security sources using built-in connectors and also industry standards, and then taking advantage of the artificial intelligence which is built into the product to correlate multiple low fidelity signals spanning across multiple sources to create a complete view of a kill chain that we understood in the first slide, and also then prioritizing those alerts so that the defenders can accelerate their time to evict any adversaries or any other threats coming in. So two of the key inputs to any SIEM that you can see from many customers, which are one coming from Microsoft 365, which is the M365 Defender as a product, and the M365 security data spanning across users, defenders, endpoints, applications and things like that. And the other piece is from the Microsoft Defender for the Cloud that we just spoke about. So unlike any other vendors that you would see, this is one such SIEM that requires defenders to filter through volumes of low fidelity data, and Microsoft has complementary XDR capabilities within Microsoft Defender to give you the detailed understanding of the Microsoft 365 side of the Defender as well as the Microsoft Azure side of the cloud aspects of the Defender. So that capability we call is basically now Microsoft Defender, and Microsoft Defender delivers the broadest resources coverage of any XDR that you would see on the market today, spanning users, devices, endpoints, applications, virtual machines, as well as on-premises with Azure Arc services. So Microsoft Defender is now, that we say, is the new XDR that manifests itself into two tailored experiences, Defender for Cloud and Microsoft 365 Defender, so that the security professionals can now not just identify issues, but also address them directly from the experiences that they are getting and using every day in and day out, right? So this slide basically talks about how Microsoft has been identified as an achieved leader in the space in the quadrant of the Gartner by Forrester for the new wave for the extended detection and response in terms of XDR providers. So XDR products like Microsoft Defender, as you see there, and the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, as well as M365 Defenders, are empowering you today in terms of security operations with a cloud hosted integrated experience that maximizes the time to defend and the attack surface for your environment. So basically, the Defender for Cloud and the Defender for the M365 is empowering you and giving you that visibility into your security workspace. Threat protection for cloud and hybrid workloads. So we just spoke about this. So this is just a summary of what we just spoke, where we say that the threat protection for the most common workloads today is that you see on the screen in terms of any of the infrastructure as a service, virtual machines, PaaS services, the AKS services, and then threat protection for Azure services. That's something that we can also take care of in terms of the Defender for Cloud. Workload protection. So this particular screen gives you a view of how we can, have a view of the workloads that we're protecting today in terms of a hybrid view of the data hosted in Azure or whether it be on the on-premises. Here you'll be able to see the workloads like virtual machines, the scanned container images from your AKS cluster. It could be, ECS instances from the AWS side of it, and things like that. So you can basically have a full view, and you can also protect those workloads from a single pane of glass from the Defender for Cloud. So when it comes to server protection, there are a few recommendations that you would have. So we would really want you to reduce the use of open network ports, right? So there are two ways, or there are two main capabilities of actually doing that today. First one is something that we call as just-in-time access. So if you have heard of JTA, which is just-in-time, this is one such thing where brute force attacks commonly target management ports and as a means to gain an access to a virtual machines, right? If successful to intrude in, an attacker can take control over the entire virtual machine and establish a foothold into your environment. So one way to reduce exposure to a brute force like this is to limit the amount of time that the port is open. So management ports don't need to be open, right, all the time. They only need to be open for a certain amount of time where you need a specific user to be connecting to that specific virtual machine. For example, to perform a management or a maintenance task. So that's where just-in-time is enabled. Now, Security Center uses something called as network security groups as Azure and Azure firewall rules, which restrict access to management ports. So as we all know, in Azure, we can configure NSGs, we can configure various security solutions like Azure firewall, WAFs and all. Over and above that, what Defender for Cloud is giving you is something called as adaptive network hardening. So applying network security groups or NSGs to filter traffic to and from your resources improves your NSG or your network security posture. However, there can still be some cases in which the actual traffic is flowing through the NSG and it's a subset of the NSG rule defined. In these cases, further improving the security posture is important, and that can be achieved by hardening the NSG. So that's where Defender for Service can step in and can help you configure those advanced level adaptive application controls. So this is not just for Windows servers, but also for Linux servers with the integration for Defender for endpoint. The second option is where we can recommend is to block malware in terms of adaptive controls. So adaptive controls is something that can also help you benefit and help you harden your machines against malware. So that's something that you should be aware of, and that's where it can bring in a lot of value in terms of protecting the resources. Now, vulnerability assessment is something that you can also get from the Defender for Service from the console itself. So it gives you an automated deployment and gives you a scanner where you can check the vulnerabilities on the virtual machine and also help you, get those findings in terms of the vulnerabilities found and what automations or tools can be used to basically address or remediate those vulnerabilities. Then there is something called as Defender for SQL. Like the way we saw, there's something called Defender for Cloud. For the servers, there's something called Defender for SQL. Now, Defender for SQL addresses and protects your SQL estate, whether it's a SQL as a service, PaaS offering on Azure, or whether it is a SQL server which is enabled with the help of Azure Arc services. So what you see on the screen is basically you're providing an advanced layer of protection, an advanced threat protection to help you detect any harmful attacks or any breach happening into your SQL estate, whether it's Azure SQL managed instance, or any of the SQL services on Azure. Not only that, if you have extended your enterprise to also scale or expand into your on-premise SQL environments, you can also protect those environments from leveraging Microsoft Defender for SQL, right? Then there's something called Defender for storage. So basically, like the way you have Defender for the server and the Defender for the SQL, we have something for the storage accounts on Azure. So whether it's a page blob or a blob, irrespective of the type of the storage, we are able to protect the storages on Azure today. So we have native security standards built into the product of Microsoft Defender to help you protect using a very simple way of enabling using a single click for the Defender for the storage accounts. So this helps you avoid the risk onto the storage, as well as it gives you a scale in terms of centralizing all those security alerts, bringing it all into a common repository where you can always run Azure Sentinel to gain certain insights in terms of the attacks happening. So basically, it's providing contextual alerts, providing relevant recommendations, and helping utilize advanced capabilities of the security artificial intelligence within the system itself. We have also Defender for containers. Should you be also leveraging containers on Azure, it can help you scan your Docker images, your libraries, and help you have an assessment of your vulnerabilities, not through static analysis, but also via a dynamic method. So there's a dynamic way of a vulnerability assessment that can be done with the help of Defender for container registries, and it basically looks at the whole image as a complete entity. So this process is more effective and has lesser false positives than the more common usage of static analysis that is there within Azure itself. So there are tools like Qualys which can help you address Defender for container registries. There is Defender for Kubernetes. If you have heard of Kubernetes, which is a fully managed container management service available on Microsoft Azure. Kubernetes, as you all know, is an open source system for managing containerized applications. So threat protection is available today for AKS, and this is supported with the help of Defender for Kubernetes. And as you know, Kubernetes is quickly becoming the new norm, the new standard for deploying and managing softwares in the cloud. So hence, Kubernetes has also been included and also been globally announced to give you that kind of visibility to also have security built into the system itself for Kubernetes clusters. Coming to the breadth of threat protection, so over and above all the defenders that we spoke so far, we can also have Defender for Resource Manager for managing and monitoring all the resources from within your Azure portal at a resource manager level. We can have Defender for the DNS system service on Azure. We can also have Defender for the keyword, where you basically protect all your private keys, your storage access keys, and all the relevant BitLocker keys on the Azure cloud itself. So this is also available today and should be utilized. In terms of the threat protection, so this is a very recent Forrester report which shows the amount of reduction that has happened and the amount of cost savings and the ROI in terms of the business benefits. So you see that on the screen, 25% reduction in terms of risk for the security threats and breach. We see a 50% reduction in the time to mitigate. And then we also see 30% reduction in the overall security and compliance management, because there's already a secure score which has been improved in terms of the recommendations and best practices. So these are some of the global case studies, customer stories that you would see that most of the customers today benefiting, leveraging Defender for Cloud as well as Azure Arc. So this specific customer has benefited not with just the footprint on Azure, but also the footprint they have on AWS and Google Cloud Platform, and wherein they are able to leverage the features and functionalities of Defender for Cloud across these 3 hyperscaler clouds. Similar to that is this specific customer case study, where we also see that they have benefited using a single pane of glass to manage the security against the cloud, whether it's a multi-cloud environment as well as hybrid on their on-premise infrastructure and servers running on-premise, where they've been able to harden, secure the workloads across the entire multi-cloud estate. This is another case study just for your reference, where you could see there's this customer who is also benefiting a similar value from the business in terms of the Defender for Cloud rollout. So what we're basically speaking in this webinar is we were trying to help you understand how what are the key challenges customers are facing today. What is the approach? What is the cloud kill chain model that we spoke about? How the attack surfaces from an access to an authorization, then moving laterally into your systems and having a full access of your environment. How Defender for Cloud as in close integration with Azure Arc can help you address most of your security challenges, not just on the cloud specifically, but also on the on-premise. So that is where we wanted to help you understand how this can strengthen your overall cloud security posture. This is a view just in terms of giving you an idea of how the portal looks like for the Defender for Cloud, how you can identify your secure score, how the secure score can be broken down into different criteria, different workloads, where you can bifurcate and go into each and every workload, see your secure score, how you can improve it and have a good recommendation and increase your overall score of the environment. And then you can also see your workload protections in terms of how many workloads you're protecting in terms of the whether it's on the cloud, AWS, Azure, or on the on-premises, and the various other aspects of the other security products that you've also implemented in the Azure portal. Likewise, this particular screen gives you a view of the Defender for Cloud, where you can see recommendations, how those recommendations are not just spread across Azure, but also you can see recommendations for AWS if you have onboarded your AWS workloads onto your Azure Defender for Cloud, and how those recommendations can be met in terms of you implementing them, automating them, or manually setting them up. So in a nutshell, what we spoke about today is Azure hybrid solutions, how we can bring in security for the entire multi-cloud hybrid architecture, leveraging cloud for Defender and Azure Arc for, excuse me, for the on-premises workloads. And then the last but not the least is some of the few use cases that we think are some of the use cases you can take back as you can walk away from this webinar is, if you're on a journey to move to the cloud, if you're embarking on a journey to the cloud, it's not just leveraging a lift and a shift or a migration to the cloud, but if you're one of the customer who doesn't want to move all the workloads to the cloud, but also wants to leave some of the workloads on premises, you can make sure that your security is strong, not just on the cloud, but also on the on-premise environment with the help of Azure Arc. And you can discover those workloads. You can push those agents onto the on-premise workloads, and you can have a complete unified view of the entire security for the cloud workloads as well as the on-premise workloads. That's one. Secondly, if you're a customer completely looking at a native migration and adoption of the cloud, you can probably look at most of the native security products available out of the box. For example, Azure Firewall, Security Solution, WAF, the DDoS protection, Defender for Cloud, Defender for Endpoints, Defender for M365, and so on and so forth. So depending on the use case, depending on the scenario, we can help you, help engage with you. We can also run solution assessments with you, whether it's a cybersecurity assessment or whether it is a cloud journey assessment, whether it's an adoption or a framework that you would like to understand in terms of a cloud adoption framework, or whether it's basically just a solution assessment to look at the prioritization of your workloads that you want to migrate, or how would you be able to help strengthen your cloud security posture, is something that we could be more than happy to work together with you. So that's what we would like to leave back in terms of some of the things that we would like you to take away from this webinar. And some of the very unique capabilities that could be leveraged with the Azure hybrid solutions is something that you see on the screen here. So there is something that you can also leverage with today with Azure Stack HCI, tightly integrating with Azure Arc as well as Defender for Cloud. Then we can also extend support for existing on-premise applications with Azure Arc, whether it's an AKS cluster deployed on the Azure cloud with Azure Kubernetes services, or a locally on-premise deployment of AKS on Azure Stack HCI. So all of these products can be basically strengthened in terms of security, and that's where the Azure hybrid security solutions can help you cater to your requirements. So that's all from my side. Thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar, and we will try to look at some of the queries that you have now. And feel free to ask any more questions if you have in these next 5 minutes. If there's anything that we cannot respond to you or address right now, we'll be more than happy to get in touch with you, separately after the session and help you understand or address those questions as well. Thank you all for this session. So I'm just looking at some of the questions you have. So there's one question in the difference between the free Cloud Defender and the paid version of the Cloud Defender. So the Defender for Cloud, the free version will give you a very preliminary or very overall view. It will not give you the secure scope for each and every individual workload that you run. It will not be able to also give you insights and help you integrate with your SIEM solution and things like that. So what I can do is basically, if you want to get a good understanding of the differences, I can share with you probably post the session a good understanding of what the Cloud Defender, the paid version is, and how the pricing for the Cloud Defender for the servers and likewise can be understood in terms of the paid version of the product. I hope I could answer that question, Abdus. Is there any other question for me here? So we are waiting for any other questions you may have. We still have another 4 minutes to go. So if there are any more questions you may have, please feel free to put it in the text box and we'll be more than happy to answer them. Hi, Mohammed, you have a question. Is there any resource where we can experience it before we opt, or something similar to explore the So what we can do, Mohammed, is we can reach out to you. I can help you understand and also share certain resources on Defender for Cloud and its features. And if there's something you would like to do in terms of initial POC or something, is something we can discuss separately post the session. Thank you so much. All right, thank you everybody for this session. Thank you for joining. Have a great day.